Hello there, and welcome to this informational video about the Developer Assistant plugin for FileMaker Pro. It's created and distributed by Dracoventions, and as you can read on screen, it's something that will help you make your FileMaker development much easier. My name is Matt Petrowski. I create FileMaker tutorials at FileMakerMagazine.com. I've been working with FileMaker for a little over 2 decades now, which is a good testament to how strong of a product FileMaker is. But FileMaker only goes so far, and I'm going to show you why I choose to use Developer Assistant in pretty much any FileMaker environment where I am developing FileMaker applications. Let's take a look. As you're probably already aware, FileMaker is a collection of code distributed in a bunch of different places. In particular, we have the define or the manage database where we have our tables. Then we also have our fields. We also have our scripts, which includes our logic and our code. We have value lists. We have custom menus. We have many different areas where code can exist. Now, predominantly, one of the most important places, or one of the places you're going to be spending most of your time, obviously, is going to be when you are editing scripts. And when you're editing scripts, a lot of the times you're referencing fields, layouts, and all the different pieces of code and elements in all the different areas of FileMaker. Now, FileMaker does a good job by providing us with a filtering feature where we can filter out things based on knowing the name. For example, if I type in print here in this search dialog within the managed scripts, quickly I'll come up with the script that includes the word print. But FileMaker stops right there. That's pretty much all FileMaker is going to find. And in fact, if we go over to the define database, which I'll bring up again, and we look in the tables and the fields area, you notice that there is no way to search for any information throughout all of this. Now, in many other coding environments, a lot of things are done within text files. And of course, searching for text is really easy. You simply bring up a find or a find and replace window, and then you find what you're looking for, and then you can take any appropriate action. In FileMaker, this is something that is missing. This is where Developer Assistant really comes in handy. Let's take a look at what Developer Assistant provides. First off, Developer Assistant can either be hidden and out of your way, or it can be continuously present, always ready for you to input. I've assigned my copy of Developer Assistant to the default key of Command, Option, and Shift X, which will invoke and bring up the Developer Assistant dialog. Now, what the Developer Assistant dialog does is it simply looks at any window within the whole of FileMaker that's on screen and allows you to pretty much search that window, just like we saw when we were looking at the scripts. But let's start with the define database. First off, you notice, or maybe you didn't, that in this area right here that it says in, the Developer Assistant is pretty much your search. And where you're going to search is based on where you're at. Now currently I'm in the fields area, and you can see that it says in DB fields. If I select on this, then I also get this default option of list lines. This list lines pretty much is the default method that we'll see when we select other dialogues. It allows you to search those dialogues, but it doesn't have any specific qualities, such as it does with DB fields, or if I switch over to tables, recognize the change where we're now searching in DB tables. And this also changes if I switch over to scripts. And you can see that it's saying search in all scripts, and then it defaults again to list lines. The list lines basically is only going to show up on dialogues where it doesn't have specific features, such as the define value list, where we only have list lines, or the custom menus, where again we have list lines. The important thing to know is that Developer Assistant will search any list that it finds within dialogues that are present in FileMaker. So if I really wanted to search across all of the value lists, and I accidentally closed the Developer Assistant, we'll bring that back up, then I can do that. All I have to do is simply type in what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for the word layout, then I can just click find, and it will find that within the list of lines or within the list of items that it finds in the dialog that is frontmost. Now, the cool thing about Developer Assistant is not that it just searches for the names. It searches for other elements and other areas within FileMaker that FileMaker simply does not itself. So here's a great little tip. I'm going to open up the Define Fields, and we're going to take a look at this particular database. You can see that I have a list of fields. Now, if I wanted to find everything that had the word paid, I could simply just go in and type the word paid. If I wanted that to be specific in that it needed to include the uppercase, not paid, I could simply use the match case option right here by turning that on. That's pretty simple and straightforward. Clicking find will simply find each time that the word paid exists. And you can see that it hasn't found any more. If I wanted to use regular expressions, which is something that I'll mention briefly, then I would be able to look for anything that includes the word paid, but would also include things such as unpaid. I'll turn on the regular expressions, turn off the match case, and I'll put in a period star and then a P. If you're interested in learning more about regular expressions and how to match patterns within text, then you can look that up on the internet. But by clicking find, you're going to see that it will find unpaid and it will find paid. Pretty much anything where the word paid is part of that word. And regular expressions, searching across all of your scripts, your database fields, your relationships, gives you a lot of power. So enough about regular expressions, but onto that topic of what I was mentioning about it searching more than just the actual name of the field. What I want you to recognize is that as I scroll through here, there is no field that is explicitly named foo, or, given that matter, anything named bar. But watch what happens when I put in the word foo and I click find. It automatically pops to the notes field, and as you can see, the comment that I have on that particular field has the word foo, and I can toggle that right here by being able to see foo, and here as well I have bar. So if I was to type in bar, of course, Developer Assistant is going to find it. So this is a real advantage. You're able to take advantage of FileMaker's comment features in order to classify and identify fields, and then use Developer Assistant to further find those items within the whole of your solution. So let's take a look at scripts now. The functionality of Developer Assistant really starts to shine when you're working with scripts. The fact that you're able to search across all scripts and all steps within all scripts is extremely powerful to the FileMaker developer. Now, FileMaker is a really good application at maintaining references. And what I mean by that is if you're over in your database and you go into your Manage Fields, if I was to change this field name from customer name to customer name X or customer name whatever, any other change, FileMaker is going to make that change pervasive throughout my whole FileMaker solution. Anywhere where the field of customer name is referenced, that will be picked up and changed accordingly. But when you're working with literal strings, it's a little bit harder, and a lot of the times you will put in literal strings of layout names or other things when you're using FileMaker's comparative functions, such as using getLayoutName. An example would be if getLayoutName equals invoice, then do something. Well, we need to be able to find those literal references. But beyond that, we can also find field references as well. For example, if I type in the word iPad, knowing that there is some checking within the scripts here, I can click find, and you can see that Developer Assistant cycles through all of the scripts, finds a script that includes the literal word of iPad, brings that script up, and then presents it to me. If this isn't the script that I was looking for, then I can obviously click the Find Next, and it will continue to find them either within the same script, or as soon as it has exhausted that one script, as you just saw, it will move to the next script that it finds with that value. Now, there's one additional feature that is super helpful when it comes to Developer Assistant, and that is this little feature that you see right here called Evaluate. Evaluate gives you access to the FileMaker calculation engine without actually having to go and take a look at things. For example, the typical approach to finding out what get application version is going to return for this particular platform that I'm working on, which happens to be a copy of FileMaker Pro Advanced, which differs from Go or any other version, I would have to go in, I would actually have to bring up the debugger, or excuse me, bring in the data viewer. So my normal process would be this: show the data viewer, go over to the watch variables, create a new watch variable if I didn't have one. Let's move Developer Assistant off to the side temporarily. Go over to the get functions, and then I'd have to scroll down to the get platform or whatever it is. Let's say application version right there. I then go down to this Evaluate Now button in order to find out that this is FileMaker Pro Advanced version 12.0 V1. You don't have to do that. Developer Assistant gives you instant access to the calculation engine. So let's take a look at how easy this would have been with the Developer Assistant. Bringing up our script, again, we had just clicked iPad. We clicked Find, it found our script, and it brought it up, and we're wondering what is get application returning on this particular version of FileMaker. Double-clicking and opening this particular calculation, and then simply highlighting only that portion of code that I wish to find out about, I can simply click the Evaluate button, and Developer Assistant is going to tell me Pro Advanced 12.0 V1, bypassing all of the steps that I had to take in order to go to the data viewer in order to get this exact piece of information. This is great because it allows you to access information based on the current context of FileMaker. So for example, if I was working within this script and I wanted to get the value of a particular field and know what that field is, if it happened to be a field that wasn't actually showing on my layout, but yet it was within the context of what this layout was associated to, all I'd have to do is double click and open up the particular step, select that code within the calculation dialog box, and click Evaluate. And it'll instantly tell me what the context is. If I need to switch context, I just switch to another layout or another window, and I'm right there. The Evaluate works on the spot based on context on any code that you actually select. Of all the searching that I've already discussed about the dialogues and the lists that they present, there's only one other area that I've not mentioned, and that, of course, is relationships. We took a look at tables, fields, and then, of course, scripts, where we spend most of our time, but you can see that here in the relationship graph, Developer Assistant says within table names. So obviously, if you have a very complex solution that you've either created yourself or you've inherited from another developer, this becomes very valuable when you have a lot of table occurrences on your relationship graph. There are only a few other examples that I want to leave you with before I head into the preferences and show you what you can control about the Developer Assistant. A little earlier, I mentioned that little checkbox of Use Regular Expressions, and I want to give you some insight into why you might want to take the time to learn regular expressions. When Developer Assistant is searching across all of the scripts in your solution, you can certainly look for literal values, you can look for pieces of fields, you can look for whole fields, whatever it is. You can also use the Evaluate, as I've shown, to get direct access to variables, values of fields, all kinds of results from all of your code. But there's other things that you can combine in order to find pieces of code within your solution that maybe would be hard to find. And that's where regular expressions does come into play. Again, not able to go through regular expressions in this video, but I'll give you a great example. Let's say in this solution, I remember that I created a dialog, and that dialog had the word delete in it. I want to find all the places where that occurs. Well, of course, I can put in the word dialog. And if I click Find, Developer Assistant will search for and find the Show Custom Dialog. In fact, if you need to be explicit, you can actually put the words Show Space Custom Space Dialog in order to get that exact value. But let's say I wanted to find a dialog that contains a certain word. Well, Developer Assistant sees this whole string of text. So watch what happens when I close this window and put in the regular expression for any number of characters, such as *delete. Now you saw that that automatically popped up, and one convenient little feature is the fact that it will remember all of your previous search values. There's my iPad, my bar, my foo, my star paid. If I look for dialog *delete or .delete, what I'm going to find is not just the show custom dialog, but every dialog that contains the word delete. This is very powerful, especially when you need to reflect on what your memory remembers about a given FileMaker solution. So that's pretty much the core functionality of Developer Assistant. Super simple, but extremely powerful. Let's take a look at the options and what you can do to control how Developer Assistant works in your environment. In order to control when and how Developer Assistant comes up in your FileMaker environment, you're going to need to set some of the preferences. Now you can easily access that by simply clicking on the utility that comes up after the first time that you open Developer Assistant, which this dialog probably should be apparent. You click on the Preferences, and then you'll get a dialog of all of the things that you can set. The first is, let me know when 2Empower FM updates are available. You can also optionally report weekly usage statistics to Dracoventions. And here's the option to open the toolbox on FileMaker Startup. You can check that if you want Developer Assistant to constantly be available. However, if, like me, you want to be able to close or hide that, you're going to have access to the hotkey to show the toolbox. You also have this option of, when the toolbox is closed, explain how to start it up, and that only happens after FileMaker is opened up. That's because some people may forget their hotkey. Now the way that the hotkey works is it simply uses a single letter shortcut designating whatever the key is. C for Control, A for Alt, and S for Shift. Or actually, in this case, I should say C for Command here on the Macintosh, because I'm using Command Option, where Option is equivalent to A for Alt, and S is very clearly Shift. And then dash whatever letter you want it to work with. You can also set a different hotkey for the hide versus the show. However, if you put the same value, it's simply going to hide and show based on the exact same key, which is what I would suggest. Now when it comes to the finding options, there's really only this one, Find Next. You can find it after the selection or after last match. And that's something that you can play with when you're searching through your code in order to find out whether that's the behavior you want. If you want it to find next after the selection or after the last match. And then finally, we have this make keys such as home and end work like Windows. And what this means is, if you have an extended keyboard and you do have a home and an end key in the area off to the right of the main keyboard, then simply the home and end are going to allow you to jump to the starting or the ending of a list of items. So for example, if you click the end key, that will simply jump to the end of all of the steps in a particular script step, I believe. I currently only have a short little wireless Macintosh keyboard, and this isn't a feature that I use, but I'm pretty much guessing, I think correctly, that that's how that's going to work. That's pretty much it when it comes to the options. So that's Developer Assistant. Things such as these EP vars and then the about, that's pretty self-explanatory, the about, but the EP vars is support for another plugin that Dracoventions provides where you have global variables across the whole of all of your different FileMaker databases that are open, where in FileMaker terms, a global variable is only specific to one particular file. So those are features you can use and find with the other plugins provided by Dracoventions. And the last final thing that I should mention is the plugins folder itself. Let me bring that on screen. This is the extensions folder that we find when we take a look at my user folder. It's stored in a different location on Windows versus Windows XP. I don't even know if FileMaker 12 is probably not supported on Windows XP. But any earlier version, which the Developer Assistant is supported in earlier versions, as I mentioned, FileMaker 11 and earlier, you can get copies supported there, so Windows XP would apply. But you're going to find it also in the user folder, which happens to be a hidden folder on Windows. On Macintosh, you're going to be in your user folder, library, application support, FileMaker, and then extensions. This is the best place to install your plugins because it will work for both versions or multiple versions. If you have FileMaker 10, 11, and 12 installed, if you put it in this location, Developer Assistant will be available on all copies of FileMaker. Now there are two plugins that create the Developer Assistant. There is the core plugin of the 2Empower FM, which is the base plugin used by all of Draco Vention's different series of plugins. Then you have the Developer Assistant. So you can see just by the size that we have the 7.4 megabytes for the 2Empower FM, and then we just have a small 53K for all of the different supporting plugins provided by Draco Ventions. But when you install, these are the two that you're going to put in this extensions folder. Put those in, and after that first time that you launch FileMaker with the plugin installed and loaded, this dialog should appear. You can click the utility, click your preferences, change them to your desired settings, and you will now have access to all of that wonderful power of being able to search in all of the different areas of FileMaker. And beyond that, being able to search using regular expressions with some of the power where I gave you just that one example. And beyond that, being able to instantly and readily evaluate any code that you're looking at within any FileMaker calculation dialog box and knowing that it's based on the context. If you're on the wrong window, you just switch. That is Developer Assistant. And at the price that Draco Ventions is charging, this is a no-brainer purchase. This is why I won't develop in FileMaker without using the Developer Assistant. I hope this informational video about Developer Assistant has helped you to see that you really can make your FileMaker development much easier. If you'd like more information about Developer Assistant, and if you'd like to download a trial copy or just get yours right away, you're going to be able to find that at dracoventions.com. There's the URL, and I'll throw that up on screen for you. Actually, I want to copy that and throw that up there. You're just going to go to dracoventions.com. And then right there on the front page or listed under their products, you're going to be able to select on Developer Assistant. You'll be able to download your demo and you'll be able to see quickly how powerful this particular FileMaker plugin is. As always, with all of my other content and my tutorial videos over at FileMakerMagazine.com, I'd like to wish you much luck with your FileMaker development, and until next time, happy FileMaking.